witches.
Hi, hello, and welcome back to another episode where we are currently exploring Japanese folklore.
Yeah, we are.
Today we're going to cover Izanagi. I knew I was going to say that wrong. Izanagi and Izanami. Um, so I'm going to go first. Um, so Brandy's going to cover Izanami, and so I'm going to highlight some things from um what is it?
Izanami.
Yeah, like from that part, like that story, but I'm not gonna try to if I spend too much time on it, I apologize. But anyways, um Izanagi arc in Japanese folklore stands on its own. He's actually the god of purification, renewal, and cosmic boundaries, which are common themes that echo through Shinto practice even today. So, we're gonna talk a little bit about his myths, I guess. Oh, that's good. Will spent a shit ton of money at the grocery store. I just got the notification. Oh. So great. Um, so when we meet Izanagi at this point in the myth, the last creator standing, he's just lost his partner, but instead of retelling that tragedy, which obviously Brandy will cover, I'm gonna focus on what it does to him and on his side. He becomes the first being to experience something like Kegare, which is the spiritual pollution caused by death. And it's central to Shinto. Purity isn't about morality, it's about harmony, balance, and being in alignment with the natural world. And Izanagi's grief knocks him out of alignment, so he's disoriented. He's spiritually polluted, and he has to figure out how to restore himself. So this is the moment where he stops being that creator and becomes something else, like a boundary maker. Um, and so he descends into Yomi, which is the land of the dead. Um, and what matters in this part of the story is what he learns throughout his journey. He essentially learns that death is irreversible. The worlds of the living and the dead must remain separate. And he also learns that contact with Yomi leaves him spiritually polluted. So when he escapes, he performs the first misogi, which is a ritual purification from all of that pollution that he, attends to. It's kind of like Dante's Inferno in a way. He's like so distraught and he like travels down to go get his wife. Um and so like that ritual purification becomes the foundation of Shinto practice. Um this misogi takes place in a river flowing with Takamagahara. Oh god. That So sorry, people. Takamagahara, the high heavenly plane. And as he washes away the pollution of Yomi, something extraordinary happens. So as he is purifying himself, this kind of transitions into the birth of the three noble children. So during this misogi, three major kami are born, each from different parts of Izanagi's cleansing. The first one is Amaterasu, the sun goddess, born from his left eye. Uh, Tsukuyomi, the moon god, born from his right eye. and the Susanoo, the storm god, born from his nose. So the light, rhythm, and force. Um, each child reflects a part of Izanagi's transformation. So Amaterasu represents clarity, leadership, and the return of light. Um, Tsukuyomi represents calm, reflection, and cycles of night. Um, Susanoo Susa
It's fine.
Susanoo no, because what's really sucks is that when I have these pronunciations, it like has like a section of it like capitalized, and so obviously that's the like
The emphasis, yeah.
yeah, and I can never do it correctly anytime, any language, it doesn't matter. Anyways, so the storm god, Susanoo, represents raw emotion, the turbulence, and the storms of the heart. So Izanagi turns his grief into God's. So he turns that pollution into power, and then he essentially turns that loss into a legacy. Um, so at the beginning, I said that he basically goes from that creator type god to the boundary type god. So the first boundary after the Misogi, uh, Izanagi seals the entrance to Yomi. This act creates the first cosmic boundary, the separation of life and death. It's the origin of Harae, purification, Kegare, pollution, and the idea that sacred and profane must remain distinct. So he's the god that also restores order, so that chaos and order, which is kind of unheard of. I mean, it's not because we read a book where one person became the god of chaos and order, but he basically becomes that like person again. He who created decided to also restore order. Um, so he basically says, "All right, that's enough. We're going to choose life and we're going to rebuild." Izanagi's influence still appears in the shrine purification rituals. Shrine, not shine. Shrine purification rituals. Um, the imperial lineage through Amaterasu, the symbolic separation of sacred and everyday spaces. So, in a lot of Japan, you'll find specific locations that are strictly prohibited for various things because that is a sacred location and space. There's a lot of shrines in households in Japan that are separated as best as they can. I mean, depends on where you live. I see a lot of videos of people living in Tokyo, and I tell you what, those spaces are crowded. Um,
Yeah.
so as best as you can, that's how it is. Um, and the torii, those are gates marking transitions into sacred ground. So if you are to travel to Japan, you will actually see and you're like going to shrines, you'll actually see a giant gate. It's usually red in color, I believe. It's usually red in color, and it is kind of like that marking of the sacred location. I'm currently playing a game that's like based out of Japan, and if you like go you can like hang from things, and so like if you hang from the torii gate, people around you get like really upset with you because it is so inappropriate. Um, and so I didn't necessarily make the mistake of doing it. Like the only one of the only ways you can like hang is by hitting a certain button, and I was like running and I like was still trying to figure out the buttons, and so I accidentally hit the button and I started hanging and I just hear like gasps around me and people getting upset and yelling, and I was like, "Oh, I did not mean to do that." It warned you. It literally warned you like be careful of doing this. People get upset. And here we go. Um, and then the last influence is the Shimenawa rope. Those are ropes that designate purity. I think in a lot of like on some like shrines and such, like you'll see woven ropes of some sort kind of wrapped around things. I think that's what those are. So he's the god who teaches that you can return from the brink and like as low as you can go and rebuild and, build from uh that grief or that like low point in your life. That grief doesn't necessarily have to end in destruction. It can end in transformation. And that's the kind of idea that he shares. So that's Izanagi, the god of renewal, purification, and cosmic boundaries. Um, so Brandy will take it away with Izanami and her descent and
Yeah.
transformation.
Yeah. And I'm going to like touch on some things that we've already talked about just because they're kind of integral to her story. Um, but the story of Izanami is a little bit haunting. Um, Obviously, we talked about the creation myths. So we've talked about her a little bit with Izanagi. Um, but this isn't the creation myth. This is a story about love, loss, grief, and what happens when someone tries to bring back what's already been claimed by death. So we're kind of talking. I'm going to go in a little more detail about what Emily mentioned. This gets kind of dark, so fair warning. It's giving like the Disney-fied version is like when Hercules went to the underworld to get Megara back in the Disney version of the movie. Um, so obviously we talked about the creation myth. In the beginning, the world was formless. It was just a chaotic mess of heaven and earth all mixed together. Um, and the kami began to emerge. The two divine beings asked to bring order to the world were Izanagi and Izanami. Um, and they created the land. Um, and then once they were on Earth, again, we kind of touched on this already, but they decided to marry, built the pillar, performed the ritual by walking around it in opposite directions. And when they met, Izanami spoke first. Um, and how fucking dare she because she's a woman and she shouldn't fucking talk first. So this was a problem. In their tradition, the male was supposed to speak first. Because Izanami spoke before Izanagi, their first union produced a child that was not quite right. Um, it was a leech-like being called Hiruko. And as one did in the olden days, if your child was not quite right, you just kind of abandoned it. And so they did. They set it adrift. And it was a heartbreaking moment and kind of sets the tone for the rest of this story. They tried the ritual again. This time, Izanagi spoke first, and it worked. And they gave birth to the islands of Japan and a lot of deities, like gods of winds, trees, rivers, mountains. But this creation came at a cost. Um, when the fire god Kagusushi was born, it was so violent and intense that Izanami was fatally burned during childbirth. Um, so just like that, the mother of the world is dead. Izanagi is devastated. Um, in his rage and his grief of his partner dying, he murders Kagusuchi. But obviously it's too late. Like Izanami is already dead. And so she descends to Yomi, and this is where the story shifts from that creation myth to something that feels almost like a horror story. Um, as one in love could understand, Izanagi cannot accept that Izanami is gone and decides to follow her to Yomi. Um, and the thing you have to know is that Yomi isn't like the Western idea of hell. It's not a place of punishment. It's not burning fire and um, demons and imps and all of that. It's a place of decay and of shadow and of no return. So when Izanagi finds Izanami, she speaks to him from the darkness and she tells him that she's already eaten the food of Yomi, which means that she cannot leave, at least not easily. But she says she will try. There's just one rule here: he cannot look at her. Um, so while she goes to ask permission from the gods of Yomi, Izanagi waits. Um, and like a lot of time passes and a lot more time passes. He starts to get anxious. And finally, he can't take it anymore and he breaks the rule. He lights a torch and he looks. Um, and he does not like what he sees. It's horrifying. Izanagi or Izanami is no longer the woman he loved. She is decomposing. Her flesh is rotting. Um, and from her corpse, terrifying beings are beginning to emerge. There are thunder gods, like writhing within her body, trying to escape. Um, so naturally horrified seeing the woman that he loves in this state, he runs. Um, and as any woman who has any ounce of insecurity in her knows, that pisses her off. So she is embarrassed, she's pissed, and she chases after him. And she sends the creatures of Yomi after him. But he escapes and he gets out of Yomi and he seals Yomi with a massive boulder. So now not only is she embarrassed and pissed, but he has sealed her in so she can't get out. So like a woman scored and all that. Um, on the other side of the boulder, Izanami speaks. She is no longer his loving partner, but something ancient and something like just with gravitas. She declares, "If you do this, I will kill 1,000 people every day." And Izanagi responds, "Then I will ensure that 1,500 are born every day." And just like that, death enters the world, not as a mistake, but as a balance. And I think as a feminist and like someone who likes to feel a little vindicated, um, this really speaks to me in that, um, like the Western myths, it's the woman that fucks everything up, right? Like
Yeah.
Eve ate the apple, all of that. And in this case,
It's
it
not.
is the male that fucks it all up. So
Good,
because
finally.
because he rejected her, basically, it didn't follow the rule. Now death is brought into the world and like there is no immortality or anything like that. So the story of Izanami is more than just a myth. It's an explanation for death, for grief, and the irreversible nature of loss. And it asks a question that shows up in cultures all over the world in pop culture. What happens when we try to bring back what's already gone? And the answer is clear. Some doors, once they're open, can never be closed the same way again. It makes me think of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode where Willow brings Buffy back from the dead and she's like not quite right because she was in
Mhm.
heaven. And it makes me think of that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that is the horrific story of Izanami.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Just teaches you that when someone says no,
Yeah.
you fucking listen.
Right.
But
So,
okay, well, until next time.
bye.